Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Definition, and with The Witcher now out worldwide on Netflix, it's time to break down everything that you need to know about the show and its ending. Throughout this video, we're going to be going through the first season's overall plot, the final few scenes, and our theories for what could be happening down the line. We'll also be discussing the order of the show's events and how the timeline for the season works. Now obviously there's gonna be heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't had a chance to watch the full season yet and don't want to know what happens, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. With that out of the way, I just want to give a huge thank you for clicking this video. Now let's get into our breakdown of The Witcher Season 1.
Do not tell me that this is finally the moment you've decided to actually care about someone other than yourself.
Don't touch Roche.
Similar to the source material and game adaptation, The Witcher follows Geralt of RivEEa, a monster hunter for hire that deals with the darker side of life, living in a world that mixes the balance between mysticism and magic. I'm just going to be giving a top level view of the story, as it's very dense, and I could be sat here for hours just talking about things due to the mythology and inner workings of it. This is one of the most difficult breakdowns I've ever put together, so yeah, just to keep it simple, we're going to be going over the main events and how they interconnect. There's sort of three main plots that go throughout the storyline and all intertwine, making a brilliant narrative. Though initially they seem disconnected, we see how events play into one another, and by the end they actually tie quite well together. Early on, Geralt is brought to a wizard named Stregobor, a man hidden away because of a target on his back who attempts to hire him to assassinate a mutant princess named Yennefer that was born under the Black Sun. Though he rejects the job, it's this path that brings him into a world of war, invasion, and he becomes thrust into the battle between the forces of good and evil. We learn that there was a group of females born under the Black Sun that came into the world with mutations and powers that could decimate the planet. Though the majority of those possessing these abilities were wiped out, some still remain, as we learn throughout the season. The show really starts with a bang, plastering incredible large-scale battles across the screen that have callbacks and nods to the Battle of Hastings and many other fantasy epics. Early on, this feels like an amazing replacement to fill the hole left by Game of Thrones, and Netflix spared no expense when it came to production values. Henry Cavill too absolutely nails Geralt, and he really gets lost in the character, masterfully recapturing his voice, mannerisms, and solitary persona in a way that feels authentic. There were initially complaints about his look, but within the first 5 minutes, I think you'll be completely lost in the performance as he perfectly brings the character to life. Elsewhere in the show exists the subplot which centers around Princess Ciri and her kingdom of Sintra, which is upended when the forces of Nilfgaard overrun it. Ciri's mother died when she was younger, and she's now looked after by her grandmother Calanthe, who too passes away in the opening of the season, though she does pop up later, which I'll explain in just a bit. Before her home is taken and all of her friends are told to drink the Kool-Aid, she's given the strict instructions to find Geralt for protection, and we learn throughout the season that Ciri, similar to Yennefer, possesses incredible powers. This is because, as we discover, her mother had a mutation that may be because she too was born under a Black Sun. She was likely never wiped out because of her bloodline, and also because Sintra distanced themselves from the forces of Stregobor and the sorcerers. This is never explicitly stated, but I think it's heavily inferred. Like, a lot of the show is about drawing your own conclusions and filling in the gaps, but we do know from the original works that Ciri was always destined to become a Witcher. We learn in the show that Geralt was in Sintra during its invasion, but he was given a false child to guard and then imprisoned when he discovered this. The law of surprise was broken, and this is why Geralt was not there for her when the kingdom fell, though he does try to track it down. Now, the revelations of this season may leave some confused, and the events of the show are difficult to understand without fully laying out the order that they happen in. The show plays very loosely with its chronology, putting certain scenes that actually set things up in the first episode in the midpoint of the season. This makes the timeline very difficult to wrap your head around at points, but basically the majority of the Geralt story showcases the events that led up to the birth of Ciri. Geralt's timeline mainly takes place in the past, whereas Ciri's is in the present. Geralt catches up eventually, but yeah, this is like a Pulp Fiction layout as far as story goes. Ciri's life and what led up to it is what the show mainly revolves around, and as someone who had only played The Witcher 3, I absolutely loved seeing one of the game's main characters in her infancy getting a fully fleshed out backstory. In the past, Geralt tells Yennefer that if she kills Stregobor then she will become a monster, but accepting this, she and the protagonist go head to head, leading to him killing her and ultimately being banished by Stregobor, who He's as duplicitous as suspected, yeah, thumbs up if you guessed that. Geralt clearly ends up regretting this, and throughout the season he's haunted by this big mistake and the prophecy that Renfri gives him. This puts him on a path with destiny in which he'll eventually end up having his life bound to Ciri, but along the way he meets Yennefer. When we first come across her, she's a hunchback that's completely unrecognisable from how I'm sure most of you remember her from the game. Or are there? That sex scene. Lads. Stregobor has his eyes set on her, and aside from Geralt, she quickly becomes one of the best characters in the show. Though she's initially led to believe that she's nothing, she's actually the perfect candidate for ascension due to her emotion, and Stregobor uses all of those at his disposal to win her round. This is exemplified in scenes where she falls in love with a mage after he shows her golden jellyfish that bring her a side of the world that she's never seen. We then later see that her classmates are transformed into eels, and upon touching the water they glisten the surface with a sparkling electricity that slowly woos her to becoming more trusting and docile towards her captors. Yennefer was born disfigured and crooked, but through a painful magic procedure, she's transformed, though this comes at a very heavy cost. In order to be reborn, she can no longer bear children, and her womb is removed. It cements how much the sorcerers, through manipulating her by showing beauty, have changed how she views the world, which ultimately she ends up regretting. Her timeline takes place both in the past and present, and out of the arcs of the show, it's probably the most straightforward to follow. I think overall though, the show is really going to get people invested in all of the arcs, as it's expertly produced, perfectly acted, and yet there's just a level of quality here that elevates it above a lot of shows in the fantasy genre. It's too early to say if this is better than Game of Thrones, but with that having a very lackluster final season, this definitely has the potential to knock it off the top spot, as it's a really strong entry. The game always allowed choices for the players, which is also reflected in the show with Geralt having to deal with the repercussions of his actions. It also presents several episodes as what I would label as side quests, which, while some may see as filler, are definitely in keeping with the source material. Many things are captured perfectly, such as quests changing their course mid-mission, and the creative team really thought about what makes the game the way that it is and how to translate this to a show. However, this leaves some of Geralt's moments feeling a bit, well, sort of like filler, that while enjoyable, add little to the overall plot. But I will say they do have a good variety to them. This includes hunting a quote-unquote devil, reversing a Strega curse on a princess, stopping a dragon, and attending a wedding. They also run into elves who, after being stripped of their castles, now live in caves, hated and hunted by humans who committed genocide on their race. We learn that Yennefer's real father was an elf, and this kind of hints at how she developed such abilities, but because of human prejudice, the race is highly persecuted. Her lover divulges this to the council, who plan to send her to Nilfgaard, but after a transformation she wins the hearts of many, including the king of Aegon. Yo, did you turn the PlayStation off? Get that sex scene back up, get it back up, this vid's for the lads! The sorcerers are using their mages to control each kingdom, strategically placing them in order to rule the courts. They deliberately sterilize their mages so that they can never have a family and will always be tied to them, but it does backfire on those who resist. With all magic comes a cost, but this one just feels overly cruel and manipulative. Fringilla, one of the sorceresses, ends up going to Nilfgaard as she is sort of cock-blocked by Yennefer, and there's hints that this invasion may be driven by her, though Nilfgaard's emperor is said to be behind it. I know it's not something again that's explicitly stated in the show, but we do learn that since she joined the court they've had massive advancements, so she was likely instrumental in the conquests. She also participates heavily in the final battle, so yeah, this is just the conclusion that I came to. A lot of this is very much filling in the blanks, so yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments if you agree or not. Yennefer detaches herself from the sorcerers after she fails to protect her mother and son and sees the corruption of the kingdom firsthand. She leaves her post and begins working as a mage. Desperate to find a way to reverse her inability to bear children, she tries to do whatever she can to rebuild her womb. It's during this that her path crosses with Geralt, and the two meet for the first time. Geralt, who unwittingly unleashes a djinn, makes a wish in order to save her, and this eventually drives a wedge between the two as it comes into question what it really was. The book actually never says explicitly what was said in the wish, but the best fan theory that I've seen says that he may have wished for the two to have a baby together one day, which would not only have bound their fates together, but also reversed her predicament. Though she can't currently have children, it does mean that eventually she may discover a way to, and yeah, this was my favourite one that I found. We don't ever find out what was said though, and it potentially creates paranoia in Yen, who believes that he may have wished for them to fall in love. Yennefer, who is desperate to have a child, becomes angered by this as she can no longer trust her feelings, and as Geralt is sterile, she is forever going to be unable to have the thing that she wants the most. There's lip service given to a child that Geralt bound himself to, and one that he lost, which is of course revealed to be Ciri. Yennefer ends up leaving though and being called to defend against the Nilfgaard invasion. In this point of the show, during Ciri's timeline, we see her stumble across a tribe of women known as the Dryads that live in Brocklien Forest. She's being hunted, tracked through the land by someone known as the Man with the Winged Helmet. Shapeshifters, men, and those with black hearts seek to find her, and oh my god, I'm starting to talk like them. One disguises himself as Malsak and tries to tempt her into joining him on an apparent quest to find Geralt, but through asking questions about their shared history, she discovers the truth. It's a real tense standoff, and they learn that they're being tracked by the Nilfgaardian forces. Ciri manages to get away, and we learn that the Man with the Winged Helmet is actually named Cahir, a big character from the book that even ends up joining Geralt at one point throughout the story. He does initially come across as a villain, and his arc actually differs quite a bit from the Netflix show. In the book, after Ciri escaped from the forces, he was initially jailed for a year, though this doesn't really play out here. Eventually, everything lines up for the final episode, with Geralt discovering Ciri after being helped by a man whose life he saves, and a mysterious character. This is actually a vision of Vicenna, Geralt's real mother. Vicenna was a healer and sorceress, and similar to how they meet in the show, they come face to face after Geralt's badly damaged. She guides him towards Ciri and the two meet, which ends the season and leaves us wondering what could happen next, with Ciri asking who Yennefer is. Now, for the next season, I actually think it will centre around Geralt training Ciri in the ways of the Witcher and preparing her for what could be coming in season 3, which I'll get into in just a bit. The Nilfgaard invasion will likely also be a key point, and I predict that Geralt and Ciri will join Yen and co in fighting them once the girl's training has been completed. In the books, Geralt actually ends up forming a romantic relationship with Fringilla. However, he can't get Yennefer out of his mind, so he never dedicates himself fully to her. To be honest though, I can't see the show taking this route, as Fringilla is very much a bad guy in this, and yeah, with her going head to head with Yen, I think they'll position her more as a villain rather than a love interest. There's also potential that the Wild Hunt could be entering at some point, as they're mentioned in the first episode, and though I don't think this will be in season 2, they will likely lay the groundwork for next time. The Wild Hunt are desperate to track down Ciri, and I think next time that her training will be completed, and then they'll come for her for season 3. Overall though, the show is an incredible journey, and though I was initially quite worried about the adaptation, they completely knock it out of the park. From the off, this is a brilliant fantasy journey that feels like the perfect Christmas present from Netflix. They really spared no expense here, and the show is earnestly acted, plotted, and laid out in a way that keeps the audience guessing. Also, yeah, the Witcher song is a complete banger. I actually got to see the show early and I was singing that for days because goddamn, get it on Spotify right now, it's banger. If I had to pick a fault with it, I would say that this show isn't really that friendly for newcomers, and I watched the first 5 episodes with my wife and she quickly got lost because a lot of it requires either pre-existing knowledge or just drawing your own conclusions. If it's piqued your interest though and you still have questions, then it's definitely worth checking out the source material. The Witcher is brilliant and definitely the one to watch this weekend and Christmas break. I absolutely loved it, and that's why it gets an 8 out of 10. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on The Witcher and what you want to see in season 2. Comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video then smash that like button and make sure you check out our full breakdown of this weekend's other big release, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, which will be linked at the end. If you want to come chat to me after the video, then make sure you follow me on Twitter at DefinitionYT, or head over to my Discord server, which will be linked in the description below. We drop videos on there early, so if you want to see stuff before anyone else, then that's the best place to be. It's free to join and we have an awesome community, so hopefully I see you over there very soon. We're also giving away a free copy of Joker, which is one of our favourite movies of the year, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribed, and leave your thoughts on The Witcher in the comment section below. The winner is going to be chosen on the 15th of January and the set will be shipped out from then to whoever gets the prize, so best of luck to everyone who takes part. This is a channel for people who are never missing television, so if that's the kind of thing you like, you need to subscribe to Definition. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this, you've been the best and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.